Voter fraud is such an important issue because it's time that the American people are honest about the impact it can have on the American elections. The reality is, any illegal vote that's cast, either intentionally or unintentionally, necessarily discredits the weight of a true, honest vote.
The impact of voter fraud is that, it basically takes a valid vote away from citizens of this country. It's something that people have fought for, the integrity of our voting system. There's fraud in this system. It sort of erodes the confidence of voters in the election. Even critics will say that vote by mail or absentee voting has the largest amount of vote fraud, and that's because folks are voting remotely in their home or remotely overseas, and there's little way to confirm the identity of that individual compared to a polling place experience when someone shows up perhaps with an ID and their identity is confirmed by an election official in a polling place. Vote fraud occurs mostly in mail voting. There's also issues when you deal with the mail service, postal service. There's delays in voting. It takes time for a ballot to be sent to and returned to an election official. And sometimes that means that the ballot may not get back on time. There's potential more errors that occur when people vote by mail. There's ways that election officials try to mitigate that problem. The statistics show that it's more common that folks will make a mistake or error or omission on their mail ballot other than voting in a polling place. And so it's more likely their ballot won't be counted when they vote by mail. Unfortunately, individuals and citizens make mistakes all the time with their absentee ballot. Some of them can be rectified, and election officials try to do that, but oftentimes that error may be fatal and your ballot won't be counted. And that's where we are today. About 25% of the country votes by mail, and most are elderly voters or voters overseas. Well, it was interesting, even go back to World War II, only about 5 or 6% of the total electorate voted by mail. But what you did see was because of the time and distance it is to get that ballot overseas, thousands of miles, to the soldier or sailor and get it back, you found that a large percentage of ballots were not getting back in time to be counted, and they weren't counted. One time I was on deployment on the USS John F. Kennedy, and my absentee mail ballot came with the Thanksgiving mail.
Absentee voting fraud is widely acknowledged as the most prevalent and common form of voter fraud in this country. Even people that are major proponents for absentee voting would suggest that it's by far the most vulnerable mechanism and it's the most susceptible to bad actors. So absentee ballot fraud impacts these vulnerable populations that are unable or less inclined to cast ballots by themselves or in person. So senior citizens are subjected to absentee ballot fraud. Non-citizens oftentimes have their ballots harvested and cast on their behalf, which actually imperils their own ability to become citizens later. Ballot harvesting is kind of a colloquial term for the collection and distribution and delivery of ballots by third-party vendors. The problem is that there's very little that's more sacred than your ability to cast a vote. I mean, I'm not regularly in the habit of giving my wallet or money or cash to somebody who said, hey, you'll take this to the bank for me, right? Yet that somehow we're okay with doing with our ballots, or at least that's what some political parties want us to be okay with doing our ballots. In fact, California, it's now legal and encouraged.
But in many states, early voting and vote by mail has sort of eclipsed Election Day. And so that seems to be the trend on where we're going. And so it raises the importance of implementing procedures that verify the identity of voters who vote by mail and having a process of integrity that the Americans can support and basically increase confidence in our election system. In a nutshell, we need to use technology to do those things that we know we need to do. For example, we need to confirm the identity of voters. And right now we have a signature verification process. There's other methods of doing things, but we need to use technology to better improve that verification process. If you want to protect the voter, you need to make sure that there's only certain individuals that your mail ballot can be returned to. One is an election official, maybe a family member returns it, but that needs to be in place to protect the integrity of the process. And it's not the Wild West. We don't want to have a Wild West situation where political operatives can go around and manipulate or handle ballots that need to have a chain of custody.